stupid.
Excuses.
Thousands. Who ate the apple? What happened?
I don't know.
Who ate the whole apple? What happened?
I don't know.
Allah ate it. Allah ate it.
Because he was too stupid.
Excuses.
Thousands. Who ate the apple? What happened?
I don't know.
Who ate the whole apple? What happened?
I don't know.
Allah ate it. Allah ate it.
Because he was too stupid.
Excuses.
Thousands. Who ate the apple? What happened?
I don't know.
Who ate the whole apple? What happened?
I don't know.
A bit early there, but welcome back to Reasoned Answers. Your home for the
crackhead clown individuals.
I wasn't actually aware, but apparently if you trigger a channel animation, it stops that, right? And whoops, I clicked the wrong button there. I accidentally cut off my audio for a second. Apparently if you trigger the channel animation, it'll cut to the scene. So someone triggered that as we were starting. Didn't get quite to the end of Who Ate the Apple, but welcome back, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about Misyar marriage. Mohammed Hijab has done his best to make this practice famous. I was aware of it before. Many people who are critical of Islam are familiar with Mutah, as the Sunnis will proudly tell you, that is just a Shia practice. We don't do that. But then they don't tell you, but we practice Misyar, which is very, very similar. While doing some research for a different project, I came across a very nice academic article looking at how there is has been a substantial rise of the use of Misyar and Mutah marriage in the Islamic world, in the Middle East, in North Africa over the last couple decades, as people have looked for ways to have legal sex without actually the commitment of marriage. Welcome back to the program, Mary. I see today we are on image mode.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on this topic?
So it's kind of funny because this is an ancient practice. And there were no statistics previously on how frequently it was practiced. So it's kind of interesting that they believe that it is more common. And it might be trending up in recent years, but really they have no idea. Most Islamic countries, when they collect statistics on things like divorce, they only collect statistics on women who are currently in the category of divorced. Like, they don't collect statistics on previous divorces. So, and that's even when they collect statistics, which has only happened recently. So it's very curious that they wish to assert this is something new. And I don't particularly see a reason to do that, because it's a very kind of marriage you can't record and get statistics for unless you're interviewing people and unless they happen to answer yes. So it may be that there isn't even a short-term trend, that people are just admitting it more, because the older name of Misyar is Urfi, which just means customary marriage according to custom. Because they started having registered marriages quite late in history. We've had centrally registered marriages in the West from 1300s, 1400s, to make legal disputes easier. People were like, just write them down, and it will be easier. There was still he said, she said, but most marriages were written down in 1300s and 1400s. That was not the case with Islamic marriages. They were written, but they were written and carried around with the people involved. There was no central registry. You're in a parish. There's a parish document that has all the marriages in it. It just didn't exist. That was not the custom. You would have your marriage document, which is totally different in terms of any kind of tallying that can be done about the past now, much less back then. So it's kind of an interesting argument. This is rising in popularity. Well, people are saying that they're participating in it more, but how on earth do you know?
Levi said, this ancient sacred practice of not prostitution. We'll see from this academic article that, at least in the author's opinion, people are using Misyar for a variety of purposes, one of which is indeed prostitution. Prostitution on the female side, obviously, the family of young girls selling their daughters into prostitution, calling it Misyar. Often poor families are taken advantage of in this way by rich travelers from Arabia, from Saudi Arabia in particular. But there are also, according to the author, are other ways that people are using this, that it's become common among young people to have temporary marriages where they're both parties, not just the woman, but both parties are just interested in having sex, and they want to avoid the stigma of having illegal sex. So they agree to a Misyar marriage, and then they end it a week later or whatever. So seems to be on the rise. I think we call that one the McDonald's marriage, right? Because of Mohammed Hijab popularizing that through the use of Happy Meals as the bride price there. In fairness, he didn't actually say Happy Meal, but KL says, isn't Mutah more humane than Misyar? Now, I mean, it would depend, right? It would certainly depend on the situation. I wouldn't exactly call prostitution humane, but the difference between the two is just a matter of technicality. In Misyar, there's no fixed end date. In Mutah, there is. So you could argue.
In
Yes.
Mutah, there is a guaranteed payment, and in Misyar, there's no guarantees. But in true marriage, there are no guarantees either. Mutah is the only one with a guarantee, which is so sad.
Yeah. So you could argue that, it's more humane for the woman to know how long she's going to be used, but neither would be humane in any real sense, of course. Had a couple unrelated comments from Jewish Samantha. Please, if you can start with a prayer for Israel, that would be appreciated. And I did that. We always start with a prayer before we start the stream, and I included Israel in that prayer on your request. And I definitely think that people should be praying for that situation with Israel and Iran potentially going to war. So definitely prayers are warranted there. Snoopy said, what is with this crown? YouTube is experimenting with their own point system, but as Jack points out, it is vastly inferior to the Reason Answers point system. You can only get 3 25-point blocks an hour. So it ends up just being whoever chatted first gets the most points, because they'll get to the 2-hour mark first, and then they'll get the 3-hour mark first, and so on and so forth. And Levi said, I didn't ask for that crown, stupid chat trekker. Well, don't worry, you've lost it now, so you don't have to worry about it. Allah and Snoopy have taken over second and third place there. And Allah says, I want to make a joke about halal meat. We'll have some, some lighthearted fun today, but it is actually, a very serious matter here. We're going to be talking about real problems, right? Real abuse occurring within the Islamic world, with women being taken advantage of as a result. So just keep that in mind, and just keep that in mind as we get through it. Go ahead and pull up the article now. This is the article that we're going to be looking at today. It was published in the Tel Aviv newsletter, Tel Aviv University newsletter. Not strictly speaking peer-reviewed, I don't believe, but certainly an academic setting, certainly a standard of writing that is expected, a standard of research that's expected, and this article does have numerous sources. title of the article is Temporary Marriage in Islam, Exploitative or Liberating? We could go ahead and get your thoughts, audience. Do you think that temporary marriage is exploitative or liberating? What are your thoughts, Mary?
Well, the argument for its liberation is that these women are worthless trash and couldn't get any other kind of marriage. That's literally it. Here's your argument. You are a trash woman. Nobody would ever marry you now that you've been thrown away. So you're super grateful to get this kind of marriage. That's the main argument. The secondary argument is some people want to hook up. And so it indulges the desires of someone who is like a celebrity or a rich woman or whatever, who doesn't want to be under the thumb of a man to have a kind of hookup. Mm-hmm. Now, while that is liberating, lots of things are liberating that are still horrible. It is liberating to go somewhere and where drugs are freely available and consume tons of drugs. Does that mean that's a good thing? Or is that a terrible thing to have in society? It is liberating for men to go to Epstein's Island and be able to indulge in underage girls. That is liberating. It is freeing to allow people to do that. It is liberating to have as many boy toys as you want with no consequences. It is liberating to be able to have sex with 80 women. That's all liberating. And they use this as if they are exploitative. That's bad. Liberating. That's good. Like, it's such a mindset today. It is quite the thing. But it's really drawn from this idea, the one heresy that most heresies are, the one religion of Satan that was his religion from the beginning, that you are your own God. If it just this use of liberation like it's great is kind of terrible. Mm-hmm. So a little column A, most of column A, a little column B, and both of them are equally bad.
So KL says, when Arabs visit Indonesia for temporary marriage, isn't that Mutah? But is a Mutah a Shia concept and haram for Sunnis? Now, you will find occasional Sunni who will agree with the Shia position that Muhammad didn't outlaw it, that one of the caliphs did, and thus they would actually openly call it Mutah. But for the most part, Sunnis will say that they don't practice Mutah, that they practice Misyar marriage. And as I said, the only difference between the two is whether or not there is a fixed period of time for a fixed price. In the end, they're pretty much the same. So what will happen with these travelers' marriage, which is what Misyar means, traveler, that they'll go on vacation, they'll quote unquote marry a girl, and they won't say exactly how long that'll last, but it will last until their end of their vacation, right? So they don't put it in the contract that it ends at such and such a time, but then it comes to an end anyway. And we'll get into all that in this article. This article does a very good job of explaining all these things. So I'll dive right in here. The status of women in the Muslim Middle East is in flux. A considerable portion are increasingly educated and focused on their careers, but at the same time, they remain constrained, varying in degrees by traditional culture and religious norms. Women played an active role in the uprisings, which cascaded across the Arab world this past year. So this article was written in 2013. So they're talking about Arab Spring of 2012. But the electoral success of Islamist parties in Egyptian, Tunisian, and Moroccan parliamentary elections suggest that guaranteeing the rights already attained and expanding them further will be no simple matter. In other words, hardline Muslims are against women's rights, even as women gained increasing.
See, here they're confused. Women are part of the Islamist groups. So they must want more women's rights.
Right.
I mean, women were part of the uprising in Yemen against age of marriage laws because they're un-Islamic. That's like saying, women in Han society were forced to crush their daughters' feet. No, they weren't. They're the ones who did it. They're the ones who drove it. They're the ones who demanded it of their daughters-in-law. The reason why girls' feet were crushed was only because of women, entirely because of women. It was not because of men. Very clear. Because mothers-in-law thought that girls without crushed feet might be strong and bold and might run away. If you can't move, you can't run. So this entire thing, women are more educated. They were part of this group, as if this is either that it's necessarily the same group of women, or that women who are educated, if they're educated in Islamic law, would not fight against their own rights. So
well, I mean, they're fighting for the rights that Allah has given them, which is not much, right?
Yeah.
So we got the absolute genius here, Tommy, in chat about sex. Why girl has 12 years married 72-year-old man.
92-year-old man.
Sorry, I said 72, didn't I? 92-year-old man. I do know how to read numbers. Believe me. Anyway, why would you say that, Tommy? What are you referring to? This is not a Christian belief.
No, well, no. Here, what he's trying to claim is that Joseph was 92 and Mary was 12, and so Joseph married her to have sex. Whenever you actually read this source, which is not contemporary, it's not true. It was made up later. The source actually says that Mary was married off to someone who would be her guardian for life and would never have intercourse with her. And thus, the only people who were eligible to marry her were widowed men who already had children and who were older, because it was the assumption, because they aren't discussing perverts like your prophet, that an old man would never touch a young girl and would not even be tempted, because that is disgusting and revolting. So if you want to say that this is true, then what it proves is that Muhammad was so disgusting and revolting and gross and intolerable and extreme that his actions are things that other people would not even conceive that someone would do something so revolting. Then okay. If you want to say that Muhammad is super, super gross because of the age gap, you can say that.
He just backfired on you.
Good job giving us such a chance to insult your disgusting prophet. And notice the mindset of a Muslim, right? Oh, a 92-year-old man would marry a small child because 92-year-old men are interested in climbing on top of tiny children. That's his mindset. But of course, if he actually read the text, which comes from the 6th century, I believe.
No,
the exact age, right?
Many, that one comes from like the 6th century. It's really late.
Yeah, that exact age anyway. The idea that Joseph was old is older than that.
That's from the 2nd century.
The exact age of 92, that comes from a very late text. But he goes to that text, and if he had actually read the text, the reason that Joseph is given such an extreme age is to prove that he would never have had sex with her, as Mary was explaining there. And it says explicitly within the text that Mary remained a perpetual virgin, that she never had sex with anyone. So he goes to a text that could not possibly support his disgusting prophet, and thus undermines his disgusting prophet.
Yep.
But we're not talking about his disgusting prophet and child marriage today. We're talking about Misyar and Mutah. And he says, according to Matthew 1 and Luke 1, Mary was 12 years old. You gave a whole bunch of verses there, Tommy. Which one says 12 years old? Which one says 12 years old?
None of them say it.
I know.
He's just lying. Tommy, we're not stupid. I know that you're really, really, really dumb, but everyone else in this chat is smarter than you, and nobody thinks that this is true because we can read. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So we are able to
I will
read.
tell you what the Gospels do say. They say that Mary was a woman, and they describe a 12-year-old as a little girl. A different person, obviously, but they describe a 12-year-old as a little girl. That would seem to rule out the possibility that she would be 12 years old.
And furthermore, she is on her own authority, which means that she is a young adult. She is absolutely
she is a adult, right? She is not living with her parents. And she probably was young, so to speak, by modern standards anyway, right? Where people don't get married to age 30, then yes, Mary was young, but she was not a child, right? Let's be clear about that. And post-transition, he says, but isn't the point of liberation that it doesn't bring in the shame and stigma, but being a Misyar wife or straight up Mutah is still stigmatized for the woman at least. And it is, but probably to a lesser degree than, just sleeping around, having sex outside of marriage openly. That's probably, of the two, Misyar Mutah is probably better in the Islamic society. But yes, a woman who has been tapped as a Misyar wife can never really be anything but, right? She can never expect to have a real loving marriage. Just as someone who has become a prostitute doesn't really have any expectation that one day one of the men that they sleep with is going to be their future husband. So Tommy, he is so fascinated about talking about the Bible. Tommy, we're not talking about the Bible today. We're talking about the sacred practice of temporary marriages that's enshrined in your religious teaching.
Well,
I know you're very
Tommy's
embarrassed
upset.
by that.
Tommy's clearly upset because his mom was the Urfi queen of his town, and everyone came to his mom's house and threw her away every few months, and then she had to go and marry someone else to make money. And so that's why she's so triggered. So no, that's your mother, and she did it with her cousin. Like all of her cousins came to her house, and that's why he's so triggered.
Yeah, that's probably
because
true,
otherwise
right?
he wouldn't try to distract. But this is a sore topic for him because it's very personal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't remember if I think it's in this article that we'll talk about how the use of contraception is not allowed within Misyar marriage. So women like Tommy's mother, unfortunately, often get pregnant from these relationships and then have to raise their children on their own. And then their child see all these men coming and visiting them all the time, and they grow up very stigmatized like Tommy did. Anyway, getting back to the article, even as a woman gained increased economic and educational freedom and played a greater role in public life in recent years, their bodies and sexuality remained largely regulated by social norms and religious doctrine. But this too is in flux, as exemplified by the increasingly popular practices of Urfi, Misyar, and Mutah marriages, that is, customary law, travel marriages, and pleasure marriages. To be sure, however, these non-permanent and often secret marriages are often a source of severe oppression and not sexual freedom. A woman's experience of such a marriage depends to a great extent on her class, age, and whether the union results in pregnancy. Obviously, in Tommy's case, it resulted in pregnancy and did not work out very well for her as a result. But for the women who don't get pregnant, they could have some semblance of a normal life, I guess. And of course, if it is an upper class woman who is using this as a way to, how shall we say, have some halal fun, then it probably won't result in any stigmatism because she is upper class, and the way the honor shame works is you just pretend that nothing happened, and then that means nothing happened. But for the vast majority of people, they're impoverished and they don't really have any good options once they resort to this practice. Mutah, or pleasure marriage, is a Shia practice. Oh, you see, Tommy and the other Sunnis, they can rejoice. They can rejoice. That is the Shia practice, in which couples agrees to marry for a predetermined amount of time, which can range from a few minutes to many years. When the contract is up, the marriage is dissolved. Mutah marriages do not confer most of the rights and obligations that regular marriages do. The husband is not required to provide a home, financial support, or alimony to his temporary wife, and she's not required to act as his housekeeper or ask his permission to leave her house. While couples in temporary marriages are allowed to live together, they often do not. Wives usually continue to live in their family homes, and their husbands visit them there. Very sexy. Going over to your prostitute's father's house your Mutah wife's father's house to have sex. Very liberating, I'm sure. Very liberating and beautiful experience.
Well, what usually happens in the Shia Mutah is that your first marriage is a regular marriage. But then, because Islam encourages divorce, when you get thrown away, after that, your father prostitutes you to the whole neighborhood because your value has been destroyed. So that is what happens very often in Shiite lands. So men can hold this over the heads of their wives. It's basically that if you make me mad, I'm going to divorce you. You will now be worthless, and your father will use you as a prostitute as an alternative means of income because you're now in his house and he has to feed you, and he wants you to make money for him. And so that will encourage women to put up with horrific conditions, which amount to Misyar marriage and Urfi marriage, because even though they don't call it Misyar marriage, even though they don't call it Urfi marriage, in Shia, they also have the principle that when a husband refuses to give rights to his wife that she's due, she ought to shut up and just accept it. Otherwise, she can complain and a judge can come in and rule for the divorce. And those are her choices. But if she rules for the divorce, then she's a bad wife, because she just ought to take whatever her husband gives her and be grateful. And now she's trash. So that is really the basis of the entire thing. Was Muhammad's life. Everything is from Muhammad's life. Muhammad permitted Mutah, and Muhammad mistreated his wives and did not treat them all equally. But because his wife Sauda took a reduction rather than a divorce, there's now this category of you're married, but your husband withdraws his support from you in some part, and now you can choose divorce or you can choose to stay. You choose divorce, now you're a worthless woman, and now other things will happen to you. And yeah, I was reacting to Tommy in this way because he immediately had gone to insulting our mothers. And he is absolutely triggered by this topic. And I cannot imagine that it is not very personal, given how triggered he is, because it's absolutely ridiculous how hysterical he is about this. And he's completely denying that that Aisha was 9 and prepubescent, because apparently Aisha is a filthy liar. So
he must be
Aisha
a Shia.
is a filthy liar. The mother of the believers. She just lies all the time. She lied about her age. She lied in all of her stories about being a little girl. She lied over and over again about being prepubescent, and she's just a dirty, filthy liar. We shouldn't listen to anything she says, I guess.
Mm-hmm. So Tommy has become a Shia. So my apologies, Tommy. Your mother was not a Misyar wife. She was actually a Mutah wife. My apologies for getting that wrong.
Oh, Ali also married off his little tiny prepubescent girl for Umar to have sex with her. So,
I mean, Shia definitely
You know.
believe in child marriage as well, and generally believe that Aisha was 9 years old. But they do say that Aisha was a filthy liar. Oh, now Aisha was 9. Okay, so Aisha was 9, and Mary was a child. Now, the difference here, Tommy, is your scriptures tell you that Aisha was 9. Our scriptures don't tell us that Mary was a child. You see the difference? Also, there's a massive difference between 9 and 12 as well.
And our scriptures say that Mary did not have intercourse when she was married immediately. And furthermore, the things that you're running to try to say that she was 12 say that she never had intercourse ever, and there was never any intention to have intercourse. She had no husband who had intercourse with her. So you're equating,
according to the sources you want to cite.
Tommy, I know you're really stupid. Aisha was married so that Muhammad could have sex with her. In all the sources that give any age for Mary, Mary never had sex. I know that you can't imagine being near a girl, a female, and not having sex. But in every source, Mary was a perpetual virgin. And all the sources that have any age for her, she never had sex with anyone. And the reason she married an old man or an older man was because it would be so disgusting that he wouldn't even be tempted to have sex with her. But you could not imagine being 110 years old if there was a little girl that you had access to who was 3 years old. You'd be on that girl. That's your mindset. Other people aren't as perverted as Muslims. This was an argument that worked even for pagans. Even pagans considered this to be a good argument, because the pagans were like, oh, gross, that's disgusting. Only Muslims would be like, oh yeah, let me get some little girl. Why? Because your prophet's disgusting. All this does is make Muhammad look worse and worse and worse.
And Tommy established the standard for us. No one said anything about 5 years old, but he volunteered. LOL, 5 years is a different. So his limit is 6, right? The 6 is the youngest woman that he personally would like to bang. So there you go.
She was 9 years old.
Maybe that's how old Tommy's mother was when she became pregnant with Tommy. Who knows? It's a possibility.
It's just crazy that they would do something that makes Muhammad look so horrific, like such an animal, and point out a story that makes Muhammad look like a complete rabid maniac who violates all standards of decency that literally anyone has. Jews, Christians, pagans just would think this was so outrageous and so humiliating and disgusting, and run to that and go, see, pay attention to this. Pay attention to how disgusting Muhammad is. Pay attention to the fact that he did things that everyone else in the world would consider outrageous. Pay attention to it. Muhammad's disgusting. So,
indeed, Muhammad is disgusting.
Is this really the description of a true prophet of God?
According to Tommy, yes, this is what a true prophet of God looks like, because his God is the God of child marriage and temporary marriage, as we are learning today. He's desperate to talk about child marriage for some reason.
I know, it's not even the
he thinks that child marriage looks better for Islam than temporary marriage. That's how embarrassed he is at this subject.
That's amazing.
In permanent marriage, Islam sanctions contraception for both men and women as long as their respective spouse agrees. In Mutah marriages, either spouse can use contraception. with or without consent. Children conceived in a Mutah union have the same rights as children of permanently married or divorced parents. They are legitimate, can take their father's name, receive inheritance, and child support. As in most Muslim marriages, the mahr, a gift, usually money, from the bride to the groom, is agreed upon in advance. And of course, that is where the price of the sexual encounter comes from. The bride is encouraged but not required to ask for her male guardian, father, or paternal grandfather to consent to the marriage. Therefore, the marriage can be, and often is, kept secret. So my bad there. I said that contraception was not allowed, but I misread it when I was skimming this to get a gist of the article. It actually says it is allowed in Mutah marriage. So there you go. The prostitute has the great right of using contraception. Islam is a mercy on women, obviously. And according to this, that the child, and I'm sure that that's correct legally speaking, and that the child has the same rights as any other child. The problem is the father is normally just going to disappear. So good luck exercising those rights, right? Good luck getting those rights from the father, because they're going to have their fun, pay for an hour, leave, and you'll never see them again, whether you get pregnant or not.
And notice that it says that, so the right to child support means that you don't have to feed the baby unless you receive support. That doesn't always mean that you get support. It may mean that the child is denied and you can't find someone to pin the child on through Islamic law because of the secretness of this. So you can starve. You can starve the child, like Muhammad was almost starved by his own mother, because Muhammad's mother had him at 4 years after her husband had died. And so Muhammad's grandfather is like, well, this child is clearly not my son's, because I know how pregnancies work. Tommy doesn't know how pregnancies work. But his grandfather knew how pregnancies work. It's like, no, you got knocked up by someone else. I don't want to pay for this child. So Muhammad's mother wasn't going to feed him. She was going to let him die. And till Abu Lahab sent a wet nurse, because it's also allowed, instead of giving child support, to provide a wet nurse instead. And because Abu Lahab forced the grandfather's hand, the grandfather asked the idol Hubal whether or not Muhammad was actually his son's, and the pagan idol Hubal said that it was his son's through throwing arrows. And so after that, again, notice that the child support didn't happen. They didn't pay the mother. Instead, they paid someone else to take the child. So the idea of child support is kind of questionable once there's been a divorce. There are rulings about the child belonging to the mother, but you can't force the father to support the mother in many conditions. So Tommy, I want you to say, my book is filthy trash. Mary was not a virgin. Go ahead and say that.
Mm-hmm.
Because otherwise you have no point. So say, my book is trash. Mary is not a virgin. And so I have some kind of point. Otherwise, admit that your statement is just stupid. And it makes you look stupid and makes Islam look stupid. Just stop it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
All right.
I made you break down inside. You both know that.
No.
Pure projection by Tommy here. Tommy, I have some words for you.
Okay.
Look, my friend, your credibility is in the bin now.
Credibility is in the bin, my friend. Credibility is in the bin.
All right. and he probably didn't hear me, so he needs to say that his book is trash, or he needs to admit that he has no point. Those are his options. Otherwise, he's going to be for the rest of the stream.
Either you have no point, Tommy, you got two options. You can say, I admit that Mary never had sex, or you can say the Quran is wrong when it says she's a virgin. Your choices. Christian logic, 9 is child, 12 is woman. Well, okay, so first of all, Tommy, that wouldn't be bad logic, because there is an age where a woman ceases to be a child. Your argument is that any age, the only way your argument makes sense is if any age is a woman.
Any age is a woman.
There has to be a dividing line somewhere.
10 is a child, 20 is a woman. Ha! You just changed from a child to a woman at some point.
Yeah, that's weird. Who would believe that you changed from being a child to a woman? Second of all, that isn't what we've said. We've told you numerous times that there's no good reason to believe that Mary was 12 years old when she was married. And third, Mary didn't have sex with Joseph, according to the sources that you yourself are unknowingly quoting, thinking they're the Bible, because you're just reading a dumb Dawa script. You tried to tell us that Matthew 1 says that Mary is 12, which it most certainly does not. That is just a blatant lie. The Bible does not give an explicit age for Mary, but says that she is a woman living on her own, a 12-year-old, according to the normal culture practice of the first century, and according to Jesus's words, would be considered a child who was living with her parents. So we can conclude that Mary was not 12 based on the biblical evidence. But regardless, there's still a massive difference between a 9-year-old and a 12-year-old, or a 6-year-old, and there's a massive difference between a 6 and a 9-year-old for that matter. And Muhammad actually married her at 6. So if your argument's about the age of marriage, then you really should be using 6. If your argument's about the age of intercourse, then you have no argument whatsoever, because Mary, according to your Quran, is a virgin.
All right. So his point is that the only way that Mary can be a virgin is if she didn't have a husband at all, because men are all pigs like his prophet. And they are absolutely disgusting, revolting animals who could never, if there is any excuse to climb on top of a female, resist it. So that is his argument. His argument is that even though the Quran says that Mary was a virgin, she could not have possibly been a virgin if she had a husband, because all men are disgusting perverts like Muhammad and could not possibly do anything but have intercourse with a woman. Can you imagine what a woman with chronic illness who could not handle intercourse would be like in an Islamic setting? It'd just be marital rape all the time. Like a woman on her deathbed, husband be like, well, I'm married to you. I know you'll die, but I got to get off right now and I can't afford another wife yet. Like, this is honestly his mentality. It's striking. Okay, he is in timeout for the rest of
so we don't have to worry about that anymore. But when he said he was that he broke us inside, villainous agreed. He said, yes, Tommy, the age of Aisha makes people feel sad. And I definitely feel sad when I read articles like this and think about all of the young girls, the women in Tommy's view, that are abused and mistreated and grow up thinking that they are trash, that all they can do is provide a opening for men to put their penis inside, and that's their only value. And unfortunately, because they're being sold into this as young girls, their parents are agreeing with that, right? Their parents are agreeing with that. And of course, their prophet would be enthusiastically agreeing with it as well. And that's why we talk about these things, right? This isn't, strictly speaking, an intellectual refutation of the truth of Islam. What it is pointing out the consequences of Islam, the disgusting nature of the teachings of Muhammad and what it does to real people. And it does make me feel sad. It does make me feel broken, but not because some idiot couldn't come up with a coherent argument for why Christianity or why I guess we're hypocrites. I mean, that's the best he could say. He couldn't.
Yeah.
And yes, Tommy supports grape.
Yes, he does. And Cargo Crew notes that in the Hadith, there is an event that is interpreted with Muhammad climbing down upon his own aunt and having intercourse with her in the grave. Now, I don't think that that's what he was actually doing. I think he was trying to bring her back from the dead because he was obsessed with her. I don't think he was publicly having sex with a dead body. I do not think that that's what was happening. But guess what the people who were standing around watching this happen thought was happening?
Mm-hmm.
His own followers thought he was having sex with a dead body. And I think that that tells you very clearly what kind of man Muhammad was. Like, could you imagine believing your prophet of God, who is doing the right thing all the time, is climbing into a grave and having intercourse with a dead body? And like, that would be your conclusion because of the character that you know of him. It is shocking. Exactly. Jack Ray says Mo must have done enough at that point for the observers to conclude he was doing that to his aunt. And I think that he actually had previously swapped wives with his uncle and had been having intercourse with his aunt. And I think that that was a well-known rumor. And that is why they assumed that that's what he was doing then.
Mm-hmm. All right. With Tommy gone, we can actually get through some of this article now. So we read about Mutah. This paragraph was about Mutah. Now, sadly for the Sunnis, that's not where the article ends. Misyar and Urfi marriages are Sunni practices similar to Mutah. And Mary and I did conclude that Mutah is a recent invention, in that the term is a recent invention, but the practice is very old. So there was a claim that Misyar was invented in the 1980s or something. I don't know exactly when it was invented, but it does seem to be a new term that wasn't used in Islamic history. They used other terms, including Urfi here. The essential difference
between customary. And by the way, like customary as in of the people, the people's common form of marriage, which is pretty striking. Marriage according to our custom. Yeah.
The essential difference between Sunni and Shia forms is that Misyar and Urfi marriages cannot be have a predetermined expiration date. Although they could theoretically last until death, they are usually end in divorce or abandonment. So that's actually a very important point here. We would assume that they usually end in divorce, but often it's worse, actually, that the man will just disappear and he won't actually go through the divorce. And then the woman will be extra stuck, right? She'll be extra stuck because she'll still be married to him, legally speaking. And since he can take 4 wives, he doesn't really care. And she's just screwed.
And
further,
so why is it that he would like to just abandon her rather than divorce her? Why is that?
Well, I mean, there's a couple possibilities. One, he just doesn't feel like it, but save money is another possibility, right?
Because what does she do? What does she do at the end of the term in Misyar or Urfi?
Yeah, so technically what she's supposed to do is demand her rights as a full wife, and then because he's unwilling to do that, then he has to give her price.
Well, even if he sends her, if a husband just divorces his wife of his own volition, he's supposed to give her mahr. Right. If she has not done something that would otherwise, he can go to court.
That's true. I guess she wouldn't specifically have to ask, but she does have the right to ask for full rights as a wife. And then if she initiates it, then he has to either give her the rights or give her a price. Or if he says, it was a nice vacation. My vacation's done. You served me well. let's get divorced. Here's your payment. But if he just abandons her, if he just disappears at the end of the vacation, then she gets no money. So she was used and abused. And then she doesn't even get her $200 or whatever the going rate would be. Doubly disgusting, right?
And, she can go to the courts and demand a divorce. But if she doesn't have any...
But she won't get any money.
Proof.
Like,
she won't, if she doesn't have proof of the marriage, she won't get the money. And a lot of times they don't keep proof of the marriage because they're like, oh, we need to keep this super secret because otherwise somebody might find out and like you might have something to hold over me. And say they do have that, then they could order the payment. But if it's a Misyar marriage where he was vacationing, she's not going to be able to follow up, and the other country is not going to be able to demand the money out of him. So
right. So the Sharia court or whatever, they might dissolve the marriage, but she won't get any money. Right. So she might not be forced to stay married on paper forever, but she won't get what she was promised either. She'll have just been used for nothing. Further, if the bride is a virgin, she must have her guardian's consent, and there must be at least 2 witnesses to the marriage. However, to maintain secrecy, brides often do not seek consent, and many weddings go unwitnessed. And of course, obviously, typically, you won't be a virgin because you'd only be a virgin once, and normally women would engage in this practice often. And as Mary pointed out, often the first marriage is a legitimate marriage that ends in divorce, and then they're forced into Misyar or Mutah prostitution because no one wants to take a previously married woman as their wife.
Yeah, it's actually more common to prostitute your daughter through Misyar than it is your minor, underage, not previously married daughter through Misyar than it is Mutah, because some families will just see her as a cash cow, and if she's prepubescent, then she's not going to get pregnant, so they'll start sending her out at 10, and then birth can be on permanent birth control, long-lasting birth control, something other than pills. And sometimes girls are married out 50 times before they reach the age of 18. And this happens often in Egypt because Egypt is a place that the people from the oil states come to buy little girls. So, you can say, oh, Mutah is worse because it's true prostitution. But Misyar is more often likely to happen to very young girls, while Mutah is more likely to happen to slightly older girls.
Ask and you shall receive. Artemis literally just showed up. I turned on probably a couple seconds after you wrote that, which means you wrote it like a full minute before you saw it. So I don't know. But she literally just arrived. She hasn't even sat down yet. You can kind of see she's still standing up. And Cargo Cruise says, after careful consideration, I feel the best way to defeat Islam is to make Muslim women realize their rights. I would say realize their value, because the rights they don't really have in Islam. Sorry to say, but Muslim women are just unaware of their role in shaping society. I'm not sure from a practical standpoint how effective this is, because unfortunately, if you've grown up in this system and you've been taught this your whole life, by the time you're an adult, you're kind of accepting of it, right? You kind of, as Mary pointed out, often the people advocating against changing these laws are women because they're taught that this is what they are supposed to do. And they're at a disadvantage from a law to begin with. So they need to be very careful about making sure to follow all the religious teachings. So from a practical standpoint, I'm not sure how well it would actually work. I wish it was that simple, right? To tell women that they're valuable and loved and children of God, and that Islam is evil and it oppresses them. but unfortunately it doesn't always work that way.
I mean, these girls are taught that the best men in the world are Muslims, and Muslim men will sexually assault them unless they cover up enough. And if they are sexually assaulted, even in their own homes, it's because they're too tempting. Like, when you have that kind of view, and if you've escaped from it, then you blame the women who have this happen to them, right?
Artemis is moving around here. Get the other cat cam set up. Oh, she's laying down. We might have her here permanently. We'll see. We'll see if she sticks around. All right. Jedediah says, I was thinking about your cutie cats, Morgan and Artemis. Here's the great Artemis, who is co-tweet. My hugs and kisses to Artemis. Hear that, Artemis? You get hugs and kisses coming your way. Probably doesn't understand the words, but she does come when she hears me talking when I'm on stream. She does hang out with me sometimes when I'm not streaming, but the percentage of time while streaming that she's here is much greater than the percentage of time when I'm not streaming that she's here. So the streams attract Artemis. She knows she's an internet celebrity. Let's see, where was I? I think I was right here. Divorce or abandonment. Further, if the bride is a virgin. Oh no, I did read that. So often, so if they're not a virgin, you technically don't need your guardian's consent anymore. You don't need your father's consent. You could be a prostitute on your own, but as Mary pointed out, often the case, your father is your pimp, and he's out there. He's encouraging you to get as many sexual partners as you can to pay for the family bills. You got to turn 50 tricks before the end of summer, or we won't be able to eat this winter. Sad but true. Sad but true. Practice of temporary marriage dates to pre-Islamic times. According to Sunni scholars, the Prophet Muhammad outlawed Mutah marriage, but permitted Misyar marriages for men traveling on business or pilgrimage.
And by the way, they absolutely did not. There's this weird hadith that conflates a pleasure hajj with pleasure marriage because the word's the same. Trying to claim something about Muhammad saying something, but that was shoved into the older one earlier.
Well, there is at least one, I think, two hadith that when the caliph outlaws it, he says, Muhammad had previously outlawed it, and I challenge anyone to show me that he didn't. So they would say, well, you see, it's reliable. Muhammad really did outlaw it, even though no one knew about it apparently until that time. Whereas Shia scholars believe that Mutah marriage was permitted by the Prophet and outlawed by the second caliph, Umar, whom they consider illegitimate. So whether it was Muhammad or Umar, the fact that it has to go to the second caliph before someone remembers that Muhammad had outlawed it kind of suggests that he didn't. I think the Shia are probably right on this one. For both sects, non-permanent marriages are devised to avoid fornication and adultery, crimes punishable by lashings and stonings, respectively. Good choice of words there. Devised, right? Devised to avoid fornication and adultery. It's a legal technicality, but that is ultimately what it is.
And that's why it's liberating, because there are extreme punishments for certain activities, and it lets you do things that are bad, but it lets you do it more freely. So liberation, like it would be liberating to no longer have any laws about animal misuse or abuse, right? That would be liberating for all the people who want to abuse animals.
Exactly. In fairness, I don't think that this author thinks it's liberating in any sense, but they're addressing the claim within some liberalized academic circles that somehow this is liberating towards women. In modern times, Mutah and Misyar marriages have been used as loopholes for prostitution and human trafficking, and as a religiously legitimate way for married men to have affairs, often with much younger women and girls. Women and girls. Author holds nothing back here. And as Mary was talking about, it's documented that often, usually they wait till like 12-ish, but of course, at least as early as 9, some would consider selling their daughters into prostitution. In a common manifestation of non-permanent marriage, poor families effectively sell their daughters to wealthy visiting foreign men in order to obtain the mahr. At the end of their visits, the men simply abandon their brides, who become unmarriageable once they have lost their virginity. It says abandon here, but often they will go through the divorce, right, and pay the price. In a Misyar marriage, if the husband abandons his wife without divorcing her, she
Well, I
cannot.
mean, just to be clear, the smart ones get their payment up front because they know.
Yeah, you definitely should do it. If you're selling your daughter into prostitution, get your payment up front. In a Misyar marriage, if the husband abandons his wife without divorcing her, she cannot legally remarry, whereas he can take up to 4 permanent wives and as many Misyar wives as he wants. Now, I don't think that that's accurate. I think they do count to your 4-wife limit under most, if not all, schools of jurisprudence. Do you know differently, Mary?
Yeah, I don't think that is actually true. I think that a Misyar wife is a regular wife. I think that somebody isn't reading their law correctly, because the only other type of you can have as many Misyar wives as you want, but they hold up a slot in your group of 4. They're not considered slave wives.
Yeah, I think that she misread it. Either maybe she conflated 2 things that read the right hand possess, i.e. slaves and captives of war, and it's something saying you could have as many Misyars as you want, and not realizing that they count towards the limit, and they're not considered slaves. There are also cases of poor families selling daughters to pimps who marry them temporarily in order to travel with them legally. So actual human trafficking there, right? Not just acting as their daughter's pimp, but selling them into human trafficking. Poor women and girls forced into Mutah and Misyar marriages because of coercion and economic hardship are most negatively affected by the institution. No duh. Like, they even cited a source for that, but duh. Of course they are the most harmed by it. They're often uneducated and unaware of their rights. Reproductive health care may be unavailable, and they do not have means to sue their husbands for divorce and child support. Disgusting term there, reproductive health care. They might mean birth control, but they probably also mean abortions. Many women, particularly in the Gulf, and feminists throughout the region, staunchly oppose non-permanent marriage because it violates the rights of women and girls who are forced into it and is detrimental to the permanent wives of the men who use Misyar and Mutah marriages to have affairs. And that's a good point there, because normally it's not a single man who is taking this Misyar wife while traveling on business or whatever. It's normally a married man. And so it also affects his legitimate, to the extent that any marriage is legitimate in Islam, wife as well, that there are multiple victims, not just the woman who is being paid. From a very different angle, Misyar, Urfi, and Mutah marriages have become increasingly popular among young middle-class single people who cannot afford or aren't prepared for permanent marriage but want to engage in legitimate sexual relationships. So this one's more interesting, perhaps more unexpected. This is the McDonald's marriage that Mohammed Hijab was talking about, right? Where we want to have sex, but that would be zina. So what should we do? Oh, we'll get married. Duh. Marriage, there's nothing wrong with divorce. Marry her for a week. Marry her for a day. It doesn't matter. I mean, Hijabian says, I know that this man is disgusting and he's just going to throw you to the side. And he goes ahead and makes the marriage anyway. And then he says, but unfortunately, he did divorce her. Of course, in that particular case, or in this type of relationship being described here, I wouldn't say that the woman is abused per se. The man and woman both have no desire for an actual marriage. Both want to participate in this halal hookup, and Islam has such a mercy. It just gives you a way to sin without it being sin, right? That's what Islam does. It finds ways to sin without calling it sin. Such a mercy, such a beautiful religion. Don't you think, Mary?
Yeah, well, this is happening. It probably actually is increasingly popular among young middle class single people as a class, because a lot of them aren't Muslim anymore. And so they're not as concerned about traditional Islamic anything. Mm-hmm. And so they are using the system for themselves. And a lot of them, in a number of countries, they are having economic crises that mean that a lot of young people are not planning on marriage or children ever. Mm-hmm. But this is a way to have a boyfriend-girlfriend relationship, often for an extended period of time. And they just use really good birth control for the most part, and then abort any kids that show up because Islam thinks that you're liquid for 40 days and the soul doesn't come for 120 days. And if you go, oh, people will disapprove of this child, then that is grounds for killing the child, because the child's not considered being sold.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is correct. The majority, there are some variation, but the majority of opinion within Islam is that abortion is perfectly fine as long as it's done early enough in the pregnancy. Tradition dictates that suitors provide a home and substantial mahr for the woman they want to marry permanently. Due to inflation and low wages, excuses. These are excuses. Don't make excuses. Haven't you learned from Mufti Bek? Middle and lower class Egyptians are forced to put off permanent marriage for longer, and as more middle class women earn university degrees and enter the workforce, they become more financially independent, interested in their careers, and more particular about their suitors. In other words, the Islamic world is absorbing the same, we would agree, disgusting secular values of the West, where marriage is just a convenience. It doesn't have any real meaning. Of course, it never had any real meaning in Islam, but they're also putting aside the other practices, religious practices of Islam. So why not just not get married or have a pretend marriage and Misyar, so on and so forth? Because I mean, we don't really believe in Islam anyway, so what difference does it make? Society will say that we're justified by Misyar, so let's get a Misyar and then just do what we want. Focus on our careers, not start a family, sleep around, do whatever we want. And this is the beauty of Islam, right? This is why people are supposedly converting to Islam, is because it's the last religion that enforces traditional societal values, except it's not true, right? Within the vast majority of the Islamic world, it is becoming secular. It's just doing it underneath the radar, right? You don't do it in public. You're not open about it. But in reality, people are not really believing in following Islam.
Egypt is about to hit a demographic wall, and it's going to be very, 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 very ugly. The oil societies where reproduction is staying fairly high are just an absolute. They're having their own demographic crisis because the same amount of money is going to have to be chopped up among a lot more people. The incomes of these countries are incredibly dependent on the oil, and they are unable to be productive like other societies. And so their standard of living is going to fall dramatically, which will cause political unrest. Egypt has not been rich since before it was Muslim. Like very, very soon after it became Muslim, it stopped being rich because odd correlation there. The Islamic world for a long time depended very heavily on trade between East and West and taking a big chunk out of it, and was not productive in any other way. And so they've already hit their demographic wall. They've already hit their issue because of their unproductive society and the difficulty of, you have a lot of people in unproductive society, wages are low. Living conditions suck. And Egypt's going to be very unpleasant very soon.
ERK is correct here. The first feminists and suffragettes actually opposed abortion as a man's way of getting away with uncomfortable situations. That, and they saw it as murder because it is murder. So this is a completely recent phenomenon in the West. Now, there certainly were societies that allowed it in the pre-Christian era, or non-Christian societies that allowed it, but within Christendom, it's a completely modern idea that abortion is acceptable. And there was a comment that the poll has 72 votes. Is that a sign? I guess it is a sign. I should close this down. 93% of you said that Misyar is exploitative. 7% said liberating on the final results there. So I'm happy to say that at least 93% of you are intelligent, but could be more because the 7% may have been thinking both, right? They may have been thinking both. Because as Mary pointed out, you could say it's liberating, but that doesn't mean it's good. Liberating doesn't inherently mean good. For these women, so these middle class, upper class women, the experience of non-permanent marriage is very different from that of poor women forced into marriage. On the whole, non-permanent marriage is considered shameful for women, though not for men. Interesting double standard. Because feminine virtue, i.e. virginity, determines marriageability and enables payment of an appropriate mahr in permanent marriage and is a symbol of family honor. When the non-permanent marriage of an upper or middle-class woman ends, she can have her hymen surgically restored as if the affair was kept secret. Her family may find a suitor to marry her permanently. Upper and middle-class Egyptian women have access to abortion, which is sanctioned in Islam for the first trimester if the pregnancy threatens the health of the mother, for example, due to medical complications, or she might be a target of an honor killing, or any other reason. As far as I know, the majority, there is some dissent, but the majority opinion is unrestricted, may not be exactly first trimester, but early pregnancy, unrestricted abortion within Islam. This is hilarious to me, though. Have her hymen surgically restored, as if somehow that actually restores her virginity.
And that's super common. It's a very, very, very common surgery in Egypt. And so plenty of people do this, this particularly in Egypt. This is a very common Egyptian thing. And I think a lot of these examples are Egyptian because it's so clearly known in Egypt that this is something that people do. So because I don't know whether or not we've gone over it here, but we have talked about how you are not supposed to reveal someone's sin in Islam. So you have to hide other people's sins. Hiding other people's sins means also that even if someone has been shacking up with somebody or even cohabiting with somebody for years, if they're not flagrant about it, bragging about it, if they just do it and don't talk all the time about it, then that's considered a secret sin that you don't publicize. And because of that, if she has restored her hymen and she does not explicitly tell her husband that she has slept with other men, she is to be considered a virgin. Even if he acquires knowledge of her previous activities, she is still legally a virgin. That's the way it works. It has nothing to do with whether or not you've actually had intercourse. It's about the publicity of the event and the plausibility of her being a virgin through the hymen. Like, this has been litigated. So if someone is living in a certain town with a boyfriend for 8 years, or 8 boyfriends for 3 years, and then gets this surgery and marries somebody else and doesn't tell him, doesn't ever go, sweetheart, I have something to confess to you, then she is an Islamic virgin. That is the way it works. She does not have 4 accusers. She is a virgin. Unless she freely confesses. If you go, if you nag her and she confesses, does not count. Like, if you threaten her, nag her, I won't love you, that kind of thing, that doesn't count. She's still a virgin. She has to freely confess it, and then you can treat her as not a virgin. Or have the 4 witnesses that nobody asked.
Yeah, exactly. Right. If Allah, the surgeon, has concealed the sin, then it's concealed. It doesn't exist. Right. So the surgery has made my hymen stronger.
And this is crazy.
But as KL points out, it's not just on earth, right? It's not just human physicians repairing hymens. This is a Allah practice. Allah does this in Jannah. So there you go. And that's completely accurate. That Allah is engaged in cosmetic surgery in Jannah. So this is Islam, people. This is Islam. In a widely publicized Egyptian case, Hind El Hawaii 27, a costume designer had an earthy marriage with a famous married actor, Ahmed El Fishaway. When Hinaway became pregnant and refused to have an abortion, Fishaway destroyed their marriage contract, the only evidence of their legal union. Hinaway gave birth, sued Fishaway for child support, and requested a DNA test, which proved his paternity. I'm surprised they allow that. I guess in Egyptian court, they don't strictly follow the Sharia. She not only gained child support, but also established a legal precedent. While Hinaway has faced social stigma, she has been in a much better position than most younger, poor earthy wives. She has a career and financial independence. She's educated, and her parents supported her in the case. In other words, this is an exception, right? This isn't the norm. She was a well-to-do person who had an affair with a famous person and was able to establish her child's rights because of her own status, really. Egyptian filmmaker Adiyat El Abnoudi said the importance of this case is that it is out in the open. The whole society has to question whether it is only her or whether society is changing. Young people want to make love without getting married. As the practice becomes more widespread in cases like Hinaway's surface, earthy marriage could eventually gain some social acceptance as a legitimate way to have a relationship and express one's sexuality. this
my
paragraph.
Sexuality by sleeping around. I'm sorry. That's really funny. I need to express my oh my gosh, heroin shooting. I need to express my heroin. I mean, it's just so odd that expressing my sexuality. It's very funny.
Yeah, this paragraph is a bit interesting, right? So we have this sacred religious belief that sex outside of marriage is wrong. But no worries, we find ways to get around that. And then it's all good. And we've liberated ourselves from our oppressive Allah by outsmarting him and finding ways to avoid his teachings. This is Islam. And in all seriousness, this is Islam, right? That Allah sets rules, Muhammad sets rules, and then the scholars, better termed the lawyers, find the loopholes to allow you to do whatever you want while it's still being halal. Non-permanent marriages are also practiced by some women over 30 who are divorced, widowed, or spinsters who have little chance of finding permanent marriages and may even prefer not having a permanent live-in husband controlling their lives. I mean, that last part's a possibility, but that first half is pretty sad, right? That if you're over 30, you have no value. There's no man would want you in an Islamic world, because we always say that, the purpose of women is sex, but actually the purpose of women is childbearing. And so if you're that old, you're not attractive. So the sex is diminished and your chances of having children are reduced. Even if you are able to have children, it won't be very many because you'll get too old pretty soon. And thus no man would want that in the Islamic world anyway. For example, Rubeya, 55, an Iranian widow, concluded a Mutah marriage with a man 25 years her junior. He introduced himself, they chatted, and she expressed a desire to make a pilgrimage to Syria. He promised to take her. He proposed a Mutah marriage so they could travel together legally, and the mar being the trip. Although she kept it a secret, she considered the arrangement a blessing. Did she keep it a secret? I mean, it's in this paper. So she eventually told it for some reason. Other unmarried, financially independent women choose non-permanent marriage when they cannot leave their homes because of family obligations. For mature, independent women, non-permanent marriage can enable them to enjoy a sexual intimacy without sacrificing autonomy. A woman's economic independence and maturity can balance the power dynamic in such relationships. They called it sexual intimacy, but let's be honest, what they really mean is sexual pleasure. Because intimacy, real intimacy, is about relationship, and there's no relationship here. There's just an arrangement, friends with benefits type situation, where you get something out of it. You get the pleasure of having sex. You get some additional benefit, mutually beneficial, all around. It's just great. It's just great, guys. This is just awesome. But there's no intimacy, there's no love, there's no real relationship in this kind of situation. And that defies the way we've been created. And
Freytag's like, oh, Mary and Thaddeus, you're a nun and a monk because, you don't like sleep around with the whole neighborhood. How could you possibly live without banging everyone? It's just.
Wow.
Like, no, we are not. We are married to different people, to be clear, for those who don't know. We are married to different people. We have both been married to different people longer than we have been single in our lives. We don't love nunness and monkness. We love uprightness and decency, things that aren't harmful to people. It is harmful to women to have more than one lifetime sexual partner, with the exception of widowhood. If you have more than one partner, your mental health declines immediately. Even two declines your mental health permanently, immediately, for life. It gets really dire when you start getting to 4 to 5. The reason why so many women are mentally ill today, we have this incredible level of mental illness among the youth, especially girls, because they've been told that they should just sleep around. And it damages them and hurts them. And that damage goes inward with women, and they are mentally harmed for life. They often make worse mothers for their own children later on because of the mental harm that has come to them. This whole crisis with rape accusations and things like that, some of these people are like, these women just changed their minds. these women are told that this is going to be a pleasurable experience in terms of the benefits for them over time, right? That this is something that's good for you, it's enjoyable. And then you wake up and you feel broken, and thus they make a false accusation in that they had agreed to the encounter that happened before. That happens. Why? Because they actually are hurt. The women who portray men as predators and rapists and things, a lot of times when they have not been in an actual coercive encounter, they have this feeling out of the real permanent damage that has been done to them. It's not healthy for women. For men, men become social, they become antisocial when they do that. They hurt more other people. They externalize the harms to all of society. They are more violent, they are more criminal, they are more dishonest, they are less reliable when they have more sexual partners. They are worse people for life, damage society, and are harmful to society because of this. This isn't some kind of, oh, we can just have this society where people hook up when they want to, and it's just like getting your back scratched. It doesn't work. That's not how human beings are made. And you're all Mr. Science. I believe in science. If you believed in science, you would want the thing that is shown to be good for the human species. And the thing that has been shown to be good for the human species is lifetime monogamy. That has been shown to be beneficial to crime, to social integrity, to children's outcomes, to people's mental health.
So I guess maybe he didn't intend nun and monk as an insult. That's all fine and good, but everything that Mary said is true. I 100% agree with what she said. Freitag is a regular here, but perhaps is not a Christian, and I never realized that previously, which is fine. I don't have a problem with you not being a Christian. I'm glad that you're here either way. But the biblical teaching is quite clear, and the biblical teaching is backed by, well, science, right? It's case studies, as Mary has explained there. There's something very special about a sexual union. It's not just an act of reproduction, not just an act of pleasure, but there's something very special about a sexual union. And when you engage in sexual intercourse, you are bound to a person, and that there is a certain level of emotion that's involved, regardless of whether you've learned to suppress that or not. The feelings are there under the surface. And when that's abused, it harms the people involved, and it harms society. It is not a good thing to be promoting this kind of behavior. And Cargo Crew, who also isn't a Christian, agrees, right? He says, Mary, you're right. Infidelity is a habit and an addiction. That people who engage in this activity, no matter how much they'll lie and brag about how happy they are and how wonderful it is, that when they go home and they're by themselves, they feel broken. They feel lonely. They are not happy with their lives. It brings temporary satisfaction, sure. Gives you drive to do it again, sure, but doesn't bring long-term happiness the way a real marriage does, the way a proper sexual union does. CM77 says, what's the difference between Mutah and hookup culture? So in this context, in the context the article is describing here, none. It can also be used as prostitution. It can be used for human trafficking, but in this case, used for hookup culture, making it halal, but not actually changing anything about it. So no difference in reality. Only difference is it's legal under Islamic law. This is the mercy of Allah. He makes things that are bad for you legal if you follow the right technicalities. Although temporary marriage is religiously sanctioned, it remains socially stigmatized, and that's probably true. That it's not openly embraced. It's not to the level of acceptance of premarital sex in the West, but it's on the rise. It's getting there. Many feminists and religious conservatives alike oppose it because it is considered to encourage prostitution, exploitation of women, and the erosion of family values. All true. In many cases, Mutah and Misyar marriage, women and girls are exploited horribly. During the Algerian civil strife in the 1990s, radical jihadi veterans of the War of Afghanistan even employed the Mutah mechanism to sanction rape, notwithstanding that they were Sunnis whose theologians abhor the practice. Well, I don't know why they engaged in Mutah. I mean, if they're captives, they don't have to marry them, right? They can just have sex with them. So they may have done that to be extra safe or something, but they are allowed to have sex with captives. And Muhammad's men asked him about this, and he's like, go ahead. And by the way, stop pulling out, because Allah determines pregnancy, not your semen. So you might as well stay in instead of pulling out. That was his advice on what to do with the women whose husbands were still alive and obviously were not consenting to having sex with Muhammad's men. From a very different perspective, the increasing numbers of independent, consenting Middle Eastern Muslims use temporary marriage to take control of their own bodies, express their sexuality, and circumvent social injunctions against premarital and extramarital sex. When used in this way, non-permanent marriage is not exploitative. As this issue enters the public discourse, and as women like Hind al-Hawani defend their rights, non-permanent marriage may just become a tool for increased personal and sexual freedom for both sexes. It's just so wonderful, Mary. So I guess the author is saying that it's both exploitative and liberating, depending on the context.
Yeah,
it's liberating in the same way that poison liberates you from having to be alive.
well, it's liberating in the same sense that free access to drugs is liberating.
Mm-hmm.
You can express your desires to alter your own mind as you see fit. Okay, great. It's not good for you though.
Mm-hmm. And I think that was the end of the article. Yes, that was the end of the article. That was her conclusion there. That was her conclusion. All right. So that is the article that I wanted to go over today. We saw Tommy earlier, of course. I otherwise haven't seen any Muslims in the chat today, but we'll go ahead and open it for callers. If people want to call in and discuss this, they can go to theology.chat. I'm putting the link to that. And there was a question from, I believe it was KL earlier, saying that I don't know if it's a man or woman, that they wanted to call in because they made a discovery or have a theory about the satanic verses and wanted to run it by us. You can do that now. I said to wait till we're done with the main topic, but we are. So anyone who wants to call in, any Muslim who wants to call in and respond on Mutah or Misyar or Urfi marriage is welcome to do so. KL, you can call in and talk to us about the satanic verses if you so chose. If we don't get any callers, we'll end it fairly soon. Your thoughts on this article as a whole, Mary?
It's kind of awful. Like, it's awful when it's exploitative. It's awful when people are doing hookup culture. It's so damaging to society in every way. It's damaging to individuals. It makes people messed up. It's not good for you. And yet, like, yay, freedom! I mean, that's a good thing. It makes me feel really old, like 500 years old.
Houston says, when Allah makes things easy for you, that's often a code word for permitting bad behavior. See the final sentence of 65:4. Not just permitting bad behavior in general, but usually sexual, right? Mary has suggested, and I think she has a pretty good argument, that when Allah says he makes things easy for you, he means it makes things easy for men sexually speaking primarily.
Well, hang on. It's not just me. That's what the Tafsirs say overwhelmingly.
Oh, okay.
Like, I'm not saying that this is my conclusion. This is the conclusion of the Islamic scholars. This is the main example they go to as to how many ways men can get the sex they want to have without breaking the rules. Just to be clear. And I want to clarify about Freytag, that Freytag was actually talking about an off-topic discussion and was comparing expertise, because I was
Okay.
chiding him for a stance that he has that's scientifically based, that I do not believe he has any grounds to take, and saying, well, you don't, and I'm like, dude, I don't think that you have a science education if you're saying that. He's like, well, you don't really have to have an education. You can just learn about things. He's comparing that to be a monk or a nun. Now, I don't really...
That's a weird
I do
analogy.
not make an equivalent to a nun as someone who's super knowledgeable about the religion, because a lot of times nuns are focused more on piety or mysticism rather than
or acts of charity,
learning.
right? Acts
So,
of charity.
or charity, but that's sisters. Nuns are focused on usually piety, mystical connection, prayer, that the perfection of one's own soul through actions with God. Sisters can do charity. Nuns typically don't. But that's why I didn't make that connection. So I misunderstood.
And no worries. I didn't take it as an insult anyway. So,
no, I wasn't insulted. I was just going, hey, look, this is bad for people. Like,
but
can't
I guess he
take the
wasn't
position.
really talking about.
Yeah, he wasn't really talking
sexuality.
about that. But I
So.
thought you were taking the position that that's easy for you to say, because you have this monk-like and nun-like idea, even though you aren't a monk or a nun, because you guys are married. But that's fine. That's fine. But it was kind of an important thing to clarify.
I'm glad that we
talked
about it, whether or not
fact
Freitag
that
opposed
liberation, liberation is not necessarily a great thing. Oh, I can be liberated to chop off my limb if I have body dysphoria or dysmorphia, where I think that like I would be better off if I had one arm, because I've always envisioned myself as a one-armed person. There's a special word for that, but I forgot what the term is. So,
I think it's mono-armed.
No, there's a special term generally for people who want to be mutilated, like people who blind themselves.
Who want to? Okay.
But I don't know what it's called.
I was just being silly, Mary. You have to clarify that.
I know, but I was clarifying what I meant, because I thought you were just like, what the heck are you even talking about?
Ollie says, you guys are nuts. You guys are nuts. I told him he can call it and prove it. And then he said, okay, we'll see. And KL said, be there in 5 minutes.
Let's find out if he's drunk first.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if this is the same, it's a common enough name.
I think it is. He was pink last time, too.
Anyway, Jack Ray gifted a Reason Answer membership.
Wasting your time on social media is one of the best deeds a Muslim can do. There's a huge need for it. You know this and I know this. So that makes the reward even greater. So give generously and Allah Azza wa Jal will give you even more.
Thank you very much, Jack Ray. We did have a smaller audience today, and as a result, not many donations or super chats, which would suggest to me that people are not necessarily interested in us reviewing academic papers and or maybe they're not interested in Misyar, Mutah. Who knows?
I think a lot of people think that they know everything about it already, which some people may. It might not be anything that sounds particularly new and interesting. Hey, KL.
Hey guys, great show. Good work. I've seen Thaddeus earlier on Adam Seeker English. So greetings and salutations. Thaddeus, I have a theory. Okay. Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was born 2 to 4 years after his biological father had passed away, someone mentioned in one stream, I think it was in Adam's stream, that Amina was probably letting herself be had for a certain amount of money. It means there was no money back then. So, for basic necessities. What if one of her clients was Satan or Shaitan himself?
Very funny. I think
Okay,
that
no.
wasn't.
Allow me to complete. Allow me to complete. It's just one line more. Allow me to complete. That would actually make more sense, because if Shaitan was the biological father, then the satanic verses make sense, because Prophet Muhammad was listening to his father.
Well, we know that Jesus would say that was his true father and not Abraham. Abraham is not your father. Your father is Satan. That is what Jesus would have said to him. But I think that I really do believe that Amina went to Medina, Yathrib. Sorry, it rhymes, and that kind of amused me for a moment. But anyway, Amina went to Yathrib and was a traveler's wife then, meaning that she had actually had multiple husbands. And what women would do, because Muhammad's great-grandmother or something like that absolutely was one of these. She Abd al-Muttalib's own mom was a person in Medina who contracted marriage with a bunch of men and then attributed to one of her husbands the children that she had. So she'd just say, well, this one's probably this husband because he's rich, so I figured that's his kid. Hey, this is your kid, by the way. But there's no way to actually know. And I think that Amina did the same thing, and she wanted to attribute it to Abdullah because his family was the wealthiest of the ones that she thought she could pin it on. And Abd al-Muttalib wasn't going to have it, but eventually had to give in.
But okay, let's say that theory doesn't hold water. The second theory that actually does hold water is actually Abu Muttalib and his son Abdullah. They got married on the same day, and from the same family. So probably Abu Muttalib was keeping it all in the family. That okay, fine. I'm not sure whether Abu Muttalib married Amina's sister or her aunt, but he kept it all in the family, if that was the case. Yeah, cousin. So he kept it all in the family.
Yeah, he might have been one of his extra husbands as he went through.
I hail from a part of the world where it's commonly said, your sister's wife is like your half wife till she's married, of course. So it's said out as a joke. It's a joke. It's a humorous kind of thing. Yeah, it's a humorous kind of thing. But let's just take it. On the lines that Abu Muttalib took it seriously, and that's the reason that there were places where Prophet Muhammad confirmed that Abu Muttalib is my father. So okay, fine, that's it. I just wanted to share that with you, and thank you for allowing me on. And Thaddeus, keep up the good work. God bless you, mate.
Yeah, and Houston reminded me of something that I had not thought of or had not remembered this stream. It is true that the later scholars claim that multiple year pregnancies are more common among the pious wives, or specifically, they say the wives of the Banu Hashim. It's the most common among Muhammad's female relatives, which is hysterically funny. It's very, very common for them to have 3-year, 4-year, 5-year marriages, and it's just a genetic thing. And according to these scholars, because so many of the women of Muhammad's own tribe had babies years after they could have possibly had intercourse with their husbands. What is this religion?
Yeah, that's interesting. And that the pious women are the ones having multiple year pregnancies. Of course, it could be that non-pious women also would like to claim multi-year pregnancies, but no one believes them. So that is a possibility as well.
Yeah. Well, the actual sources say that's really common in Banu Hashim. And then they are very pious, so this must be true, is what it is. So it's specifically addressing groups of women within a tribe are very prone to this, and then going, yeah, it's totally legit because they're pious.
And Prophet Muhammad has joined the chat to clarify. I said, I asked Allah whether or not, him being all knowing and all that, who Muhammad's true father was. And he said that I'll get Muhammad to come in and give you the answer. So Muhammad came in, special privilege of Allah, allowing him to speak from the dead, says, yes, my father is Satan. So there you have the confirmation from Prophet Muhammad himself. All right. I had another message here from Ezra's Rabbit, and this could be another possible explanation for why the audience was small today, because Ezra is not the only one here, or Rabbit, maybe I should say, is not the only one who said something like this. I think everyone is busy watching Israel and Iran today. That would make perfect sense that people are more interested in breaking news coverage today.
I wish that they would just drop like a few tons of machine guns and ammo in the major cities, because the Iran would fall, the Iran government would fall. Iran would fall, and the people would establish a different government if they had access to weapons. I really, really wish they would do that, because there's no way it wouldn't fall, because something like 90% of the population is actually against the government, and probably 10% strong against or neutral, and 10% very, very strongly against, and only 10% pro. So toss out a whole bunch of weapons and take down the government. And I mean, it could be one Iran still, right, Ellie? I'm fine with one Iran, but we ought to have one Iran that is not under its current leadership. And I think that of all the places where a violent revolution might lead to better conditions, Iran might be the only ones.
I'm actually surprised that the government survived the mass protests. What was that, a year ago, 2 years ago?
Weapons. The people had no weapons.
I know, but I mean, they had numbers, right? They had numbers, and the government.
Guns matter.
Well, they more or less had to admit that they couldn't quell the protests, right? They had to admit that they couldn't do anything about it.
Yeah, but they could just hunker down and wait, because they
which is what they ended up doing, right? They ended up just waiting it out. I'm rather surprised the government survived that, actually, because yes, they don't have any weapons, but
I really, 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 really want someone to ship in a ton of weapons to Iran, because that is the only place in the Islamic world where I think there would be a massive improvement in the country if the people were empowered to revolt. That would help so much.
Well, I think that if the Iranian government were to fall, we'd see a drop of about 80 million Muslims instantly. That the number of people who are considered Muslims would drop about 80 million. I just looked up the population. The population of Iran is 90 million. Very, very few people in Iran really believe in Islam, yet officially 99% of them are Muslims. And once the government falls, I think that you'll just see people openly declaring their apostasy, and be very interesting to see what happens. I do think the government will fall eventually. I don't think that it can possibly sustain itself indefinitely, but that could be years. Obviously, they survived the last crisis. So, Ollie says, vote for Mary. Well, how are we going to vote for her? Should I start a poll? Vote. Choices are Mary or Thaddeus.
I think that there's a good chance that Ali here is Iranian. Yeah, is Iranian. And I have to vote for myself. Sorry, Thaddeus.
And I can't vote.
Everyone vote for me. You can't vote. That's hilarious. That's hilarious. Anyway, so yeah, I think that he's probably Iranian from. I mean, he's Ali, and he's.
And I mean, he said yes.
Yep.
So, and his
That's
opinion would probably be pretty common there, where, you know, his comments aren't the clearest, but I don't think they're Islamic, right? I don't think that he believes in Islam in any way. It's getting political now. We're voting. It looks like it's going to be a landslide, unfortunately. Allah voted Mary because he's not gay. Well, I did say vote for your sexual preference. I mean, come on. All he says he's a citizen in the U.S., but maybe Iranian background or something. In any case, what is the vote for? Nothing. There's just a comment to vote for Mary. So I've created a poll that just says vote. We'll go with that, though. The poll is for your preferred president of Iran. Should it be Mary or should it be me? If I knew that, I would have put the Ayatollah as an option. But I mean, he's not technically president, but you know. What kind of poll is that? Not participating. Yeah, it's just fun. It's just a joke.
It's just a joke. Ali made a joke, so he made a joke too.
I didn't hear what the vote was, but I went with Mary to be safe. Always a good choice. Always a good choice to vote Mary. Why was it Artemis an option? Well, I mean, if Artemis was an option, I think that Mary and I would just be
I'd lose. Clearly,
I'd just be 100% Artemis, and everyone, and we'd be like, "Oh, I see. No one watches these streams for me or Mary. Okay, I got it." All right, let that finish up here, but looks like we're probably wrapping up today. Be back over the weekend having a stream about. Sorry, Prophet Muhammad caught me off guard here. I voted Thaddeus because I'm kind of gay.
I'm losing it.
Anyway, I'll have a stream over the weekend, either tomorrow or Sunday, on putting Lily J to the test, putting her questions into ChatGPT, and see if we ever get the answer that she just totally got on her own, right? Just totally, she just asked the question and that's what it just naturally said. I have a feeling we'll never get the answer that she gets for some reason, but we'll see on that. Tomorrow night, Bible study on the Reason Worship channel. I have a couple of recorded videos that I've kind of been working on simultaneously. The publication of those is to be determined, but when they do drop, I think that you will definitely enjoy those.
And sorry for being faceless. I just have not been sleeping well because I still have delayed sleep phase disorder, and I can do Sunday once a week and be okay. But now my kids have early therapy appointment. I have some kids in speech therapy for a short while, and it's early o'clock in the morning, and 2 days a week just destroys me. So when that's over, I will be less of a mess.
Mm-hmm. We'll have a stream or two with Mary next week. Do you know what your next topic's going to be?
No, I have no idea.
Okay.
I have to actually think.
No worries. We'll figure something out. We'll definitely have a good stream. If Mary has time, we'll have a deep educational dive. If she doesn't, we'll react to a convert video or something along those lines. Mary sent me one a while ago of somebody claiming to be an atheist who was instantly converted from one line of the Quran or something like that. I forget the exact context, but it was from one fact. I don't remember if it was a line of the Quran or not. Totally not a grifter or anything, right, Mary?
Oh yeah, totally honest, completely.
Because that happens. That people are just like opposed to religion, and then they hear one sentence and they convert. Any case, we'll figure something out with Mary and Team Dream. Had a very good comment. And to summarize the conclusion of that paper, liposuction is liberating for anorexics. Yeah, pretty much, right? Do what you want to do and find ways to justify it. Oh, we can't log off yet. Cargo crew with the super sticker.
Brothers and sisters, why to lose this great opportunity? Remember, when the person is on his deathbed, the last minute, he will ask Allah Jalla wa Ala to be delayed for 1 second to do what? Not to pray, not to do other things, but to give sadaqah, because sadaqah you can give it just like this, in 1 second.
Thank you for not missing that beautiful opportunity to enhance your status with Allah and sending in your donation. Keep it up, says the exercising pair. Carol said, what's the vote for? No reason whatsoever. No reason whatsoever. But Mary is the winner of the pointless poll. She got 74% of the vote, and I only got 26% of the vote. Don't know what it means, but that is all there is to it. Praying for you, Mary. Take care, says ERK. We appreciate that for sure. Oh my gosh, that panic little scream was just so cute, Mary.
I have no idea. And there was a suggestion to do abortion Islam, but it'd be a really short stream. So
yeah, that's all right. I mean, we only had 2 hours today.
Right. Yeah. I'm saying the abortion would be like a 10-minute stream at most.
Yeah. I mean, this stream probably could have been 10 minutes. So,
but there's even less material. So
Jack Ray says, why Toulouse, France? Good point. Pointless poll, Mary won. Yes. Thank you all for joining us today. We'll close out with our favorite pastor and a beautiful prayer from Pastor Jake.
Pray this ceaselessly. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me. Pray this ceaselessly. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me.